Hello and welcome back, friends. This is Cyndi Silva on the Metaphysical Wisdom podcast. I'm here with Akke-Jeanne. She is the co-founder of the Jung platform, one of my new favorite resources online for depth psychology. And today we're going to talk about heartbreak. And love to just have you come forward and say hello, Akke-Jeanne, and let us know why this topic is important to you and anything else you'd like us to know about you.
Yes, well, thanks, Cyndi. I really enjoy being here. I think the topic of heartbreak is important for all of us. I've personally dealt with many heartbreaks on my path to a point that I thought, really against my will, I feel like I've become an expert on the topic.
Hmm.
And then I decided to write a book about it, and it's only published in Dutch. But that really helped me because in my coaching practice, I also noticed that a lot of people are dealing with heartbreak and somehow get stuck in the experience and don't dare to open their heart again to live life to the fullest. So I think it's an immensely important topic.
Yeah, I can feel your passion about it.
Yeah.
And speaking about having published it in Dutch, where in the world are you? So people have a sense of
Yeah,
where.
so I live in Amsterdam, and currently I'm visiting my brother who lives in Salt Lake City. So I'm currently in Salt Lake.
Oh, welcome to the United
Yeah,
States. I'm
thank
in
you.
California,
Yeah,
so not too
nice.
far.
Yeah,
Yeah. So this topic of heartbreak and what you shared, your own personal experiences, that's really common when we have a lot of experience in one area. We tend to show up as a guide for others. And you mentioned in your coaching practice, um, and is that your main line of work, your life's work? Are you a therapist? I know you're into Jungian psychology. Give us a little background on your background.
yeah. So I'm a psychologist. I was a psychology lecturer for a long time, and next I learned about coaching and doing Jungian coaching, and I facilitated a lot of certificate programs, but did a lot of life coaching myself as well. And nowadays, I work at the Jung platform and still facilitate coaching programs. And I do have some coaching clients, but not too many because the week is really too short for that. But yeah, but I can see in the coaching practice that people so often come with heartbreak kind of experiences. I also because I can see that heartbreak is a kind of experience that the pain is really experienced at a core level, at a strong bodily level, and that is not only experienced when you lose or when the relationship is ended, but also when you lose a partner because the person is dying, or when a good friend is moving to another city far away. You can also feel like it's heartbreaking, or when you have a desire for life that's unfulfilled. For example, I've coached clients that really wanted to become a parent, but for some reason life didn't offer them children. And that was really a heartbreaking experience to them. So I think heartbreak can be experienced in many situations. So I think it's even impossible not to have your heart broken in life.
Yeah, because there are disappointments, right? We get attached to things and then we lose them through the natural impermanence of things.
Exactly,
What I'm
exactly.
sensing, though, that you're saying is that heartbreak is a heart, there's an opening there, right?
Yeah,
And
yeah.
what, how do we hold space for the grief of heartbreak and also the perspective that there's a new direction opening from that experience as well?
Yeah, I love that question because we all want to see the positive, of course, in a heartbreak experience. And the painful element maybe is that we want to go there as quickly as possible, but
Mhm.
it really takes time. And what I've seen is that people give themselves so short time or such a short space to grieve properly.
Mhm.
And you cannot open your heart if you haven't grieved. So maybe it's not exactly like there are certain steps, and only after step 5 or so that your heart gets open. But we really need to open our heart for the grief first,
Mm,
open our heart in the pain. And of course, this is contrary to our evolutionary beings, because the moment that we experience hurt, we protect ourselves, and maybe the mechanisms are already in pain, so that we don't feel it too much.
mm,
So the mechanisms that help us to not experience the pain are super active in a heartbreak experience. And of course, we sense the pain, but still we have a tendency not to go there or push it away. Or sometimes people really jump in it and also say, I cry and I cry and nothing happens. So they feel like they need to be diving directly to the pain to get to the opening as quick as possible, and that is not the case. So I've developed this idea over the years that there are really several invitations in heartbreak, and if you take on those invitations, then slowly over time you gradually notice that your heart is getting more and more open, and that newness of life can start to come through you, because there has been some kind of clearing and opening in the practice of taking on all those invitations.
mm. Yeah, that's really powerful. And I love when you use the word evolution, that really pinged something for me. Like there's a biological evolutionary process happening simultaneously with this, and that everyone's process is unique. Like there's no roadmap for it, because the way it unfolds through us individually is a moment by moment experience, right? And to be present with what's there in the moment is the journey, is the what's being offered.
Yeah, totally. And you're saying really something very important there, because people often feel very lonely in the experience of pain. That because it feels so personal, and the experience is very personal and individual. And by the moment that you realize that this is part of being human, and that with the experience you're really belonging to the human family,
Mm,
it doesn't take away the hurt, but it does help to relax a little, because the moment that we feel isolated, that's sort of adding to the pain that we're already experiencing. So, yes, the experience is very personal, and in a strange way, it's also very impersonal, because
mhm,
as humanity, that's part of what is on our path.
mm. It's another great paradox.
It
And I've,
is.
I've thought of that before. I think in situations like that where it seems overwhelming, the experience so immense, that if I open up to the reality that other people in life have experienced this, it's almost like the field gets bigger. So the experience is held by something greater than myself, even though I'm not abandoning the process. I'm just asking for and inviting in other experiences of this same thing to have a greater capacity to withstand that intensity.
Yeah, exactly. It's I like what you're saying there, the connection to something bigger. I think the moment that we feel that we belong somehow, we can immediately feel already what that does, and we can just sense that our body somehow comes to peace. We sense that the connections with others are becoming more intimate, even because we recognize each other in the pain. And when you recognize your own pain in that way, you also become a little bit more compassionate towards yourself. So there's you can already see the potential of more love in the heartbreak experience, that it's sort of presenting already. Because I think that is one of the things that a proper heartbreak through the experience can bring to you, that you love your life more deeply, that you love others more deeply, that you open your heart, because you've learned through the process about who you are, who others are, what it means to be human. You
Mhm.
can live more wholeheartedly. So that is sort of the overall invitation.
Yes, I like that too. I see what you're saying. Living more wholeheartedly is like embracing the totality of who you are, all these different aspects, and to have really fully embodied that, you can have compassion for other people who have experienced it and have compassion for yourself. So that's really an empathic connection that we have with each other.
Yes, because what I've seen is that somehow we have a tendency to judge ourselves in the process when we're in pain. Either we feel like, oh, I should have moved on already. We have some kind of judgment over the time that it takes us to grieve, or if we, for example, feel betrayed by our partner, we might feel like, yeah, but that's because I'm stupid or I'm not nice enough, or there's all these kinds of judgments. So adding again to the pain, there's all these self judgments. And when you become aware and really tend to what is happening in the moment that I'm experiencing pain, and you notice that all these judgments come up, and you become aware of it, there's an opportunity to be a little bit more friendly, because the things that we're saying to ourselves are so incredibly mean often. We would never say them to a good friend. You know, we might say things to ourselves like, ah, that's really stupid. That is so poor. Well, you would never say it that way to a friend. So really developing some kind of friendly dialogue inside will help you move, or will help you deal with situations in life in a way that helps you to become a little bit more resilient, because it doesn't really help to judge yourself or another.
Mm.
You get stuck in the process.
Oh, that's wonderful. Reminds me of a book I read recently, Whole Brain Living by Jill Bolt Taylor. She talks about the different quadrants of the brain and how we need to get them to communicate and come together in like this, she calls it a brain huddle, where we can have compassion for different parts of our brain, like the reptilian part of the brain that's carries the wounds and the fears, need to be able to get it to speak to the upper parts of the brain that are more loving, parental sort of perspectives. So I feel like, yeah, that you're really tapping into that wisdom of how to um, acknowledge that different perspectives coexist and how to get them to come together in a way where we can see the bigger picture and address the situation from multiple perspectives.
I like that. I like also the angle there, because the moment that we judge parts of ourselves, and it's really easy to judge ourselves because we might be angry, and you know that something has happened to us, it has broken our heart, and we might be really angry with the other person for breaking up with us or for behaving really poorly. And then we might, so the anger is there, and then on top of it you might judge your own anger, that you feel like you shouldn't be like that, or you might be revenge, experiencing feelings of revenge and really getting in a loop there, and you notice you don't want to be there but you are there. So
Mhm.
you can never, um, or your being cannot evolve when there's all these judgments on top of it. And I like when you talk about different parts of your brain, because the judgments really come from a part of the brain that, and it's judging other parts of our being that are maybe a little bit more primitive. And certainly because they've been pressed down, they also, when they come to the surface, they are more raw and
Mm.
maybe a little bit more difficult to deal with, because no one likes to see, hey, I'm really jealous here, or I'm really spiteful, or I really hate my partner. You know that, but first you need to be present with what is before you can change or come to a stage where life can be experienced differently, where there's also space for other kinds of emotions.
Mm.
So.
Yeah.
Being present really to what is happening is one of the invitations in Heartbreak. Like, can you notice what's going on? Which is, of course, an immense task because
Mm.
most likely we don't like what's going on.
Yeah, it's a big shift. It's a transitional opportunity from needing to control something to being open to learning. That
Yeah,
shift to
yeah,
because we want it when there's pain, we want to be control so we don't have to experience more of that.
yeah,
Instead of opening, we want to close.
yeah. And I like also when you're talking because I see what you do with your body, and I think this is really how the body resonates. Because when we're in control, we're sort of in protection mode, and to be unguarded in life, unguarded, unprotected for the heart, that takes immense courage. And when your heart has just been broken, that seems like a world away. That it's never possible again to live with this open heart. Yet I believe it is possible. There's just not a quick fix.
Yeah, that is kind of a radical concept, that when we have heartbreak that we want to open, because the reflex is to protect, right? That biological reflex you were talking about. But
Yeah,
there's this other instinct that comes from a different part, that this is an opportunity to open more fully to the opportunity of learning. And
yeah,
I like what you said before too about really, I feel like there's a paradox here with shadow, if we could talk about shadow a little bit.
of course.
Um, because there in the shadow, there's a tendency to be victim and to kind of go in and wallow in the victimization of the heartbreak, right?
Yeah,
And then there's this other shadow aspect of wanting to move on quickly and get to other things and not deal with it. So there's, the shadow is working both ends,
yeah,
right?
totally,
So
totally.
how do we embrace the shadow and bring it into the middle way?
Yeah, so I like that question. What you can see in, for example, when you're in the middle of pain, when you are in the experience of pain, you can notice what might be going on for you and the ways that you might be used to protecting yourself. So what I see that people often do is rationalize their feelings or disconnect a little from the feeling. The moment that it gets uncomfortable, disconnect. Or people are super busy, so they don't have to be with their feelings. They're always in some kind of action, or just deny that there's this immense, this intensity of feelings. So we have all kinds of ways in which we protect ourselves that are there for a good reason, and they are can be helpful. Yet, if you want to move on, it is exactly those dynamics that are also in between us and positive experiences. So, the moment that something really good happens, we might also have the tendency to rationalize, to disconnect a little. And not because we choose to do that consciously, but that's just a mechanism that we're used to. We live within that mechanism. We don't even know that there's maybe another mechanism that we can access as well, because the other mechanism is outside conscious awareness and is shadow material. So we make use of certain patterns that protect us from pain, but also from the good experiences.
Mhm.
So there, that is really interesting. That it has a good, it serves a purpose, but it also withholds us from really moving on.
Mm. Yes, I'm kind of seeing that image as you're speaking of that, there's an attenuation if that pattern is rigid, but if we can acknowledge and become aware of it, we can expand the circumference of it so we can feel a little bit more on both ends, right? And start
Yeah,
to be more inclusive
yeah.
instead of exclusive in what we're willing to experience.
Yes, and psychologists call this the zone of stress tolerance. So we're
Uh,
able to deal with certain amounts of stress, and if we can just stretch it a little, that zone, that really helps us. We become more resilient, and of course, you don't want to stretch it to the extreme, but
Yeah.
just increase it a little on the positive and the negative. It just goes hand in hand. It's not separated.
Wow. I didn't know there was a name for that. Thank you.
Yeah,
It makes me
yeah.
feel like the heartbreak is an opportunity for increasing your stress tolerance, right?
Yes, definitely. And it's full of material that you can learn about yourself, because we have stories about our heartbreak.
Mhm.
And oftentimes it's some kind of storyline that's really similar to our childhood woundings.
Mm.
So we really want to look at the conclusions that we draw, why this certain experience is on our path. So the other day I had a client, and she said, I really feel like I'm put at the side of the street, being treated as garbage. He didn't want it anymore, and there off I go, and he never looked at me again. And it was really important for her to see that that was not the intention of his behavior, but that that was her personal conclusion based on the fact that he said, I want to end this relationship. So we come with this storyline, and often this is a result of a storyline that we developed in our childhood. That for some reason, our parents weren't able to love us the way that we needed to, or that we didn't feel good enough, or maybe we didn't feel smart enough, or we didn't feel we were the right person, or maybe we feel that we shouldn't exist at all. So really, our childhood conclusions about who we are, based on a child's perspective on how the parents treat, is what we repeat in heartbreak. So the heartbreak offers really sort of an experience in which you can see, this is part of me. This is where my experience of the past, I keep on repeating them, because that's what we all do. And that's not, our psyche is not putting us in these situations to haunt us, but really to give us an opportunity to become aware what
Yeah,
storyline we're living.
totally.
Yeah,
No, that's so common, I think, with maybe being born into a family where parents aren't capable of loving, right? And then the child takes that personally, like they're not lovable. And they don't realize, you can't from that perspective realize that it's the parents that aren't capable of loving. It's not you that isn't lovable. But
yeah,
that story gets carried, right,
yeah,
into your relationships, as you say. And then you keep getting that pattern to help you see that it wasn't you that's not lovable, but that it is so hidden and deep, it's hard to get at. So it's helpful to have someone that can hold space for
yeah,
that,
yeah.
to ask the right questions. Uh,
Yes. And for example, there in my own life, so my father died when I was 8, and somehow this has impacted my life in heartbreaks on many occasions. And I had this pattern of unavailable men. And even before I knew where they were unavailable, my heart had already opened. And I never understood why. And I did understand that somehow it related most likely to the loss of my father, but I couldn't really connect the dots. So in my 20s, I was in love with this person, and for some reason I couldn't let go. And I think it's taken me 10 years ago or so to let go. I wasn't seeing this person anymore. But he kept on showing up in my dreams, and in my dreams, I was again in the situation where I'd known him, until one moment, really after 10 years, I said goodbye to him in the dream, and I never had that experience anymore. And that really coincided with a part in my life that I had decided to commit to someone else, but that had taken me 10 years.
mhm.
So fast forward to continue that story. I fell in love with another man, and he was unavailable as well. And it was really like there's such a striking pattern here. It's almost a copy. Different person, somewhat different dynamics, but really the pattern, it's a repetition all over. And of course, I also had to let go of him. That was inevitable.
Mhm.
And then one night I dreamt I was with my father in the hospital, and he was saying, and the doctor said, "Well, you're about to die." And I embraced my father in the dream, and I felt that the body was already cold. And it freaked me out, but I still attached to him and didn't let go.
Mm,
And it was really when I woke up when I realized this is what I've been doing for a long time. I've been unable to let go. And I hang on even when the time has passed already. It was already time to let go. I
mm,
couldn't let go. It was just like the young child that wasn't able to let go of her father at age 8. I had been repeating in my love life several times. But that's taken years to sort of uncover that thread, that what
mhm,
had been in my heartbreaks. There was the part of, the history of heartbreak shows up as well. And it was an opportunity to revisit the experience of loss. And also, I did a ritual to let go of my father separately from letting go of that particular man. And that really helped. But like you say, we're all informed in our behavior and driven by motives in our life that are outside our awareness, and it takes ages before we recognize what it actually is.
mm. Wow. Thank you so much for sharing that very personal
Yes.
experience. I'm sure it's going to be helpful for many people. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think not to mention that maybe that was carried through the lineage too. It could be a pattern that goes back further than your own personal life, right?
I love that you pick up on that. Yeah, that is certainly the case. Yeah.
Yeah. Hmm.
Yeah, I think the family history, it's all there as well, and it's of course interesting to see how did my father deal with the heartbreaks, and how did my mother deal with heartbreaks, and that was sort of the starting point of my own heartbreaks, and how I was really forced to develop those skills throughout life because I had a ridiculous amount of heartbreaks.
But look at what you're doing with it. You're helping people. See, I feel like, the Imago work. You know what Imago is, the relationship therapy, where it's
Yeah,
the mirror, where you attract a partner who is going to bring up your wounds so you can heal them. I feel like there's an Imago in our life's work in relationship to the family of origin that we choose. It's like the family of origin is going to give us the exact wounding and experiences we need. So when we face those wounds, we come to our life's work.
yeah.
I feel like that my family of origin was definitely an imago for my life's work.
Yeah, yeah, I can see that for my own life as well. That probably the best training ground for a psychologist, and to pay attention to the feelings, because there was so little attention in the start of my life for feelings.
Mhm. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. I wanted to ask you another question about shadow, and I'm not sure if this will dovetail into heartbreak or not, but um, since I just attended a workshop with you on Sunday on shadow, which I loved, and the exercises you shared with us were just really impactful. But I have this question, like, when we say namaste in yoga, and it means the divine light within you is the divine light within me. And when we come together in that acknowledgement, we're one.
yeah,
I have this sense that there is only one light. Yeah, and we're all expressions of that. I feel like I wonder if there's just one shadow and we're all expressing one version of the same shadow. Like we each have our own relationship to shadow. So it
hmm,
seems like you have a shadow and I have a shadow, just like you have a light and I have a light. But I sense at a deeper level that there's just one shadow, and our unique life experience in relationship to that makes it appear that there's multiple shadows. I wonder if you've ever come across anything in relationship to that topic.
I like the question, and it's also a sort of new question to me. So I can give my thoughts about it that haven't been properly
Yeah.
processed.
No, this is just spontaneous fun.
Yeah, yeah. So I think there is, if we really make it to some kind of basic, that there's the expression, the light is really an expression of love, and that the shadow is destruction, and that those are sort of the two parts, or the dynamic in life, creation versus destruction, and they go hand in hand. And of course, there's always a dance between them, and the interaction. So I would say the divine is the creation or the love, and then the shadow is the destruction. And when we're putting it like destruction and creation, you can already see they belong together. The one cannot go without the other. So I don't know if it's then one, or that yeah, I'm not sure.
Mhm.
I hear myself
I'm
talk.
not sure either, but I just,
Yeah,
the question has come up, and it came up again during the workshop for me.
yeah,
And just wanting to ask a few people who really enjoy the topic of shadow and have some direct experience with it, to see if that resonates. But I like what you're talking about, yin and yang, because I
yeah,
work a lot with that in my
yeah,
Qigong practice. And yes, I do see it as creation and destruction. And yet um, the symbol, it's called the Tai Chi symbol, but people call it the yin yang symbol. There's a little of each in both, right? So there's
yeah.
creation and destruction are happening simultaneously.
Yeah, yeah.
And
And of course, we have a judgment over the destruction, most destruction actions or behaviors or thoughts we're not particularly fond of, because we prefer
mhm,
creation.
yeah,
Yeah,
but what's fun and what's bringing us back to full circle is that heartbreak is an experience of creation and destruction, right?
yeah. It's definitely a process of death and rebirth.
Mm,
It's letting go of your old self, and allowing a new part of your being come to light. And we have to let go. And of course, we have to let go of a person, but we can still keep the memory, and we can still love the person. I think it's quite essential in letting go to keep on loving the person, because the moment that you say, I need to stop loving this person, that I need to let go, you already feel like, oh, I'm clinging on to the person because I don't want to stop loving. So
mm,
really allow yourself to keep on loving what was and who has been, and also keep loving the old self, but also display some love for your future self that's waiting to appear in your life, and start making some space for it.
mm. Yeah, I like that, part of acknowledging. I think for me, one of the most liberating things is acknowledging my helplessness in terms of changing other people, right? Like when we acknowledge that we're helpless in changing another, then that's empowering in some
It
unique
is. It is, and it empowers, because also the body there feels like relaxing. Because if you're trying to help and you're action oriented and you're really trying to do something for the other, and you get frustrated because the other person is not moving along, or not in the way that you want the person to move along. And then the moment that you realize, yes, but it's not my responsibility, or you have your life, and that's your right to do with it what you want. Ah, I can sort of sink back, connect with myself again, and really tune in what's needed for me.
Wow, you said something really powerful there. It's just connect back with myself, right? That's
Yeah.
always coming back to that connection and stabilizing there. The core stability of being connected to self is, I think, what can help you be rooted, like a tree. When the wind is blowing, it's not blowing over because its roots are sinking into that connection to self, is that sinking into the root system of stability.
Yeah, and I would expect, but you know that better, that the qigong is also about staying centered.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, connecting to both forces of yin and yang, heaven and earth, and being an instrument through which they both flow.
Yeah.
And sometimes we're more yin, sometimes we're more yang, but we have this ability to adapt to the moment, to what's needed in the moment.
Yeah, yeah. Beautiful. And that, of course, is also what Carl Jung meant with the individuation process, becoming whole, because we have a tendency to be identified only with part of our being and sort of ignore or neglect the other part that is also us. And I love that Eastern practices really have an embodied way of bringing that process in or come to life. I really like that.
Yeah, it brings a playfulness out and innocence, and it's about effortlessness, not using excessive force, which we're conditioned to do, and we do so often without realizing
Yeah,
how we use a lot more energy than is required for the situation. And I think with heartbreak, as we kind of touched on it, we use a lot more energy when we are confronted with something like that than necessary, and it blocks the flow of what's actually I want to say dying,
yeah,
be reborn.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And of course, the process of psychological death is immense, and that often shows up in people's dreams as actual death. And then people ask me, like in the middle of the heartbreak, I dreamt that I died. Will I now die? Well, let's look at it symbolically, and what part of you needs to die, or what part is it's time that maybe has died already, and what needs to be part of the past and recognized and valued, but what's part of the past. And also then if we let go of something, then there is this stage, and I for a long time called that the boring stage. After a heartbreak, once you've worked your way through these intense emotions, that you feel very alive when that happens. You might not like it, but you feel very alive. And then there's this phase or this stage of grayness, of nothingness, and I called it boring. But probably boring is not doing really justice to what's happening on the psychological level, because the birth of something new is being prepared, and it's not visible yet, and you might not even be able to sense it yet. But if you manage to be in the moment and just continue with life, take on new things, because the brain likes being learning and adapting to the new situation. So if you're somewhat active and you just stay with the feeling of not knowing what comes next, then after a while new elements of yourself, or you start developing some kind of fantasies, or you have these daily imaginations, and you see something like, there's a spark there, and then you notice, there's something being reborn, or I am being reborn. But I always find that middle stage personally super difficult, and I also tell my clients that not to give up, because that's when people sometimes give up, like, I did all this work, and now life is pale, and it didn't bring me something, or not the thing that I hoping for. And again, time is your friend in dealing with grief, and time itself does not do the trick. You need to do inner work with it as well. But time will help you heal. It does not heal itself. Yeah.
Mhm. It's so important to go through the full cycle. Like it's like saying, I'm going to go try living out east and only living there 6 months and experiencing spring and summer and not experiencing fall and winter. And then you can
Yeah.
know what it's like to live there.
Yeah.
what I like, what you're saying is that in the fall and the winter season of our creativity, our creative cycle, it seems everything's dormant, nothing's happening, but underground, there's a tremendous amount of turning over. And in the spring, when those, that the creative juices that have been fermenting, if you will, underground start to come up from the subconscious to the conscious, there is like an abundance of ideas. It's hard to even land on one because there's so many options for me anyway, my creative cycle. And I do experience a little bit of melancholy in the winter season of my creative cycle, but I've come to enjoy that feeling and to find the right music to be with that feeling, because I know what's coming is a springtime where I'm going to be so busy with new ideas that I'm just resting in that winter season, because I know I'm going to need it like a bear hibernating.
Yeah. Yeah, oh, I like that a lot, and also because you mentioned, I started to love that feeling, and I think in general, loving your way through life is probably the best advice that a person can give you. But also love your way through a heartbreak experience, because if you can somehow come to terms and start to love that this has been on your path, your heart really breaks open. And I like that you notice that that you start loving the stages that, well, I clearly struggle with, like when I call it boring, that is actually just hiding that it's struggle for me, because if I knew how to deal with it, I wouldn't call it boring, then I would just do it or be with it. I wouldn't have such a strong judgment. But really loving that stage and becoming familiar with the feelings, what you're doing, and also recognize that the next season will also come, so it won't be forever. That sounds like a very pleasant way to be with that part of the experience.
Mm. Yeah, thank you. It helps for sure, because I realize anytime I'm avoiding anything, I'm not free,
Yeah,
because we're trying to control when
yeah,
we're avoiding. So to not be seeking something or avoiding something is to be free to experience what is.
yeah.
And I realized all my seeking was to eventually come to a place where I was no longer seeking. So I realized that was only going to happen in the moment. And I
I,
still have to keep reminding myself.
yeah. Yeah, I think the moment, when we're seeking, we're not in the moment, and the lessons or what's there in the moment goes lost on us.
Yes.
Yeah. So seeking, the state of seeking, well, we can all relate to it. That we hope to find answers, that we hope to be in the next stage.
Yeah.
How
Yeah,
to,
that carrot on the string, right? That
yeah,
is, I don't know about in your culture, your part of the world, but here it's like we're programmed, conditioned to seek something better in the future.
yeah,
And I think that really gets in the way of embracing heartbreak and the benefits of it by seeking something better in the future. And we're always comparing what we're experiencing to something else that could be feel better emotionally, probably,
yeah,
uh, in my experience.
yeah. Yeah, and the moment that we say, "Oh, I don't like it. I'd like to feel differently," anytime you're after a quick fix or seeking something else, you know that there's some kind of protection mechanism active, because you
Mm,
don't want to be where you are.
yes.
So seeking is for something else, or developing is really being in at odds with yourself, or struggling with your own nature, that you feel like this is not good or not good enough, or it should be different. It's really almost a rejection of your own nature, and with it probably nature itself.
Mm. And then what we learned in our shadow work was that protection mechanism is also has its value, right? It probably got us to where we are. It helped us
Yeah,
survive a lot of things, but it's not the right tool for every situation.
exactly. And it might be the right tool for 95% of the situations that you encounter. That is quite good to be a little bit protected in the world. However, it is often the thing that is really helping us, that is getting us in a place of stuckness when we do too much of it. So if we once in a while, it's okay not to feel your feelings or to rationalize your feelings a little. For example, if you're at your workplace, you're trying to do something, you have this intense emotion, you notice it's there, you quickly disconnect from it for a little to only tend to it later. That might be quite good and productive. And certainly, if the workplace isn't a particular safe space for emotions, it is good that you're protected there. But if you don't have a if you don't, or if you're not able to put that in place or not put it in place when you want, you're always protected and not feeling, and then it becomes really a hindrance between you and experience of life. So just knowing it's there and sort of having the capacity to put it in place when you want it and not put it in place when you don't want it, from an aware point of view, that gives freedom. And I think that's what shadow works gives. It gives a lot of freedom. It gives us options. We're no longer stuck that, there's this situation in life and this is the way I deal with it, but there's more options at your disposal, so you can use more.
Mm, it's great. It's great. I just remember, I'm going to look at the time and see how we're doing, but a time in my life where I was really overprotective, and I had a dog that would just bark, excessively at anything that came to the house. And I mean, it was really over the top. So I had this little, creature outside my body in my waking dream every day of my life, protecting me excessively, And then when I really came to see that pattern, that shadow pattern of overusing that tool, and worked with it, and got it to acquiesce a little bit, the dog was no longer in my life for natural reasons. So I felt that was very symbolic.
Oh, I love that. I love that example because that so well shows and illustrates inner dynamics and shadow work. That,
Mhm.
and also nice that you recognized it as, hey, there might be something. What is this situation that I'm in? What is it revealing about who I am and how I'm showing up in life and how I am maybe protecting myself and alert on yeah, on super alert modus.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, every dog I've ever had has had some kind of neurosis, to be honest. I don't have a dog right now, but if I got one, I'd be curious to see what showed up.
Yeah, yeah. I don't have a dog, but I really like this example. And of course, it's also with the people that we attract in life. The real basic question is, what do they mirror back to us that we're not aware of yet? And certainly, if we have strong response to them that we don't like, there's definitely shadow material. Or when we're in love, that's also shadow material because the other person we see the god or the goddess in the other, which is really part of our own divine nature that we're projecting on the other. So from a Jungian point of view, being in love and projecting on the other is less romantic.
Mm.
It still happens and we feel like we really see it because the other is this divine creature and we're amazed by it and we have all this positive effect going towards the other. But yeah, that is also interesting. Like, what is this person showing back to me that I don't know yet?
Mm. And I'll say one more thing and then leave it, hand it to you to share anything you'd like to say, last words. But you're bringing us back to the yin and the yang, like for me, the inner marriage, the anima. Animus is more accurate terms for Jungian, but that when that inner marriage of yin and yang, these forces within us are balanced, we tend to, I've experienced, attract more of that into our lives. And when it's that relationship is out of balance or out of sync in some way, where one is dominating the other, we see patterns come continually into our life that reflect that.
Yeah. Yeah. Totally. Totally.
So how would you like to wrap things up? Is there anything that you'd like to share that didn't get shared? And how can people reach you if they'd like to work with you, if you're accepting clients, or give us some ideas of what that might look like?
Yeah. Well, I think the overall thing when people are dealing with a heartbreak, give yourself some time and take it as an opportunity to learn about yourself, about the ways that you're protecting yourself in life, to learn about your childhood woundings, to reflect on the way you deal with your emotions, how you regulate maybe your own emotional life if you are connected to your body. It's an opportunity to develop self-compassion, and it's an opportunity for transformation. So I like asking the question, what would my future self like, how I deal with my heartbreak right now? And then what is sort of giving me some kind of inspiration, and it's just a sign. It's not the destination, but you move towards that destination, and of course, then you see what will emerge in your life by itself. So that is really for the heartbreak. Take the opportunity. Don't rush your way through it. Try to love your way through it, because if you love your way through it, there is the opportunity of opening your heart, or you're doing that in the process. You can embrace life more as it comes. And I think we all, as human beings, have sort of the same desires and to love life. I think if we can love life and really everything that's part of our path, then we're super happy. Yeah.
That's so powerful. Thank you for that. That really sums it up. And another piece that came in is what I'm hearing you say is taking time to go through heartbreak is kind of like taking time to fall out of love. And it's the same as falling in love, to take time. Don't rush through it. Don't rush into it. Learn about yourself as you go through it. I feel like they could go together in a way.
Yeah, and start loving yourself more deeply, even when you come across all these things in yourself that you struggle with. That's the opportunity where to practice love.
Mm,
It sounds simple, but it's quite a task.
yeah, and it's probably the most important point that we could make and
Yeah.
share. How about working with you if
Yes.
people want to
Uh,
experience?
Thanks for asking that question. Yeah, people can reach me at Akke-Jeanne at Jung platform. So jungplatform.com is our platform, and my email address is on there as well. It will of course be shown as well. I have this unusual name, even for Dutch people. My name is quite unusual, so I have a tendency to write it down, but it will be written somewhere.
I'll put it in the description.
Great. So it's just akkejeanne at jungplatform.com.
Okay, excellent. Well, I really thank you for your time, and I know that you're very busy with all of the offers that you're putting out in the world, and I'm really grateful for the Young Platform resource and all the really high quality content and faculty that you share. Thank you for
Oh,
putting that
well,
together.
thank you for inviting me, and I really enjoyed this conversation and the questions you asked.
Oh, thank you. I enjoyed it as well. And
Great.
thank you all for tuning in and making time for this today in your life. I hope it's been helpful. You can, again, look in the description for Akke-Jeanne's email address and her website, and reach out to her she can be helpful if you're dealing with heartbreak or know someone who is. Bye for now, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you.